just have the delegation, if gentlemen, if you'll come up here, and then what we'll do is we'll hear from the chair of the delegation, Delegate Parrott first. He'll introduce each of our delegation members. They'll have a few minutes to speak with us. On your table are some cards and pencils. So please feel free to write down a question you'd like to ask any member of the delegation or the delegation as a whole. We'll have time before we leave here to address some questions. So as the screen's going up, please help me welcome our delegation into the podium, Delegate Neil Parrott.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. We really appreciate it that you're here to listen to what happened in Annapolis over the last 90-day session we just had from January to April. A lot did happen. There's a lot of information. And today what I want to do is let all of us speak. We're going to start and end with the senators. We're going to start with Senator Serafini and then with Senator Edwards. It was funny at our table. As we watched that video, talking to a delegate, Mike McKay, said, "Hey, that could be your video. Most of this is in your area." And he pointed out, well, it continues further west. So it could be Senator George Edwards' video, because it goes from where he is, Williamsboro, all the way out to Garrett County. That was fantastic. Thank you. That was really good. It's nice to see it. It made me want to go to some of those places again that I've been to. Like, that's great. So for today, what I'm going to do is go ahead and start with Senator Serafini, and then we're going to hear from the delegates, and then end with Senator Edwards. It's really good. Right over. I guess as the good senator's coming, he really doesn't need an introduction. He's with Serafini Financial, has his own business going out at his own risk, and it's nice. A lot of us here are business owners, and so he's able to talk to you from that perspective. And so with that, please welcome Senator Serafini.
Thank you, Neil. So I just want to be clear, too. I appreciate the call out, but the bond bill was actually Delegate Lyle's. We make sure we cross them in both sides, but it was his idea and his support. So everyone should take and appreciate his work on that. So I'm observing something. I'm known to stir it up a little bit. For all you Pens fans, I do have my Caps tie and my Caps cufflinks on today. So let's go Caps, right? All right. I don't really care if they get any further. They beat the Pens, frankly. They lost that series, I would have ripped my heart out. Anyhow, so, and I thought about that, the controversy. We see a lot of Pens fans in the areas and Caps fans back and forth, and it's pretty heated. And, you know, I'm glad that you all came, but we used to have a lot more people come to this. And it's interesting, but they came when we were at odds with the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, to be brutally honest, those of you know, there was a time where it was not a symbiotic relationship. We love Paul Fry. We love the Chamber. We think this is working. And I don't say that in any disregard for previous people. It was just different philosophies. It was, you know, people struggled with, you know. To be a Democrat in Washington County is like being a Republican in Annapolis, okay? It's an exact mirror image. And so maybe, Paul, we should start arguing a little bit more. I thought about that, you know. I mean, Paul is an Ohio State fan, so come on, you know, really, for us Penn State fans, that's kind of hard. And it kind of mirrored what happened in Annapolis. This should have been the year that the Democrats went after Governor Hogan as a Republican in a very blue state. And yet, at the end of session, you had the union having a big rally and protesting, but not against the governor, against Mike Miller. They had shirts that said, "Take a hike, Mike." And then you had Peter Franchot saying, "Hey, I'm going to go down and help whoever runs against Mike Miller in his district, a Democrat." So it was just a really odd session from that standpoint politically. So the controversy stirs things, maybe it gets people's interest. What was controversial, and Senator Edwards and I serve on the budget and tax. Right from the beginning, we got hit with the federal tax change and what that was going to do for Maryland. And we found that 72% of Marylanders were going to get money back from the federal government. Another 18 were going to be left alone, and at just a small amount we're going to pay more. So this pointed to us, though, that if we didn't make any changes, because the federal government made higher taxable income, your adjusted gross was higher, but then they lowered the rates or they increased the standard deduction, and that's what created savings tax-wise for people. Now, in the state of Maryland, we work off the federal number, so we were going to have a higher amount of adjusted gross income, that if we didn't do something, just keeping things the same, we were going to realize about $500 million more. That's about $350 at the state level and $150 to the locals. And so Senator Edwards and I were in a room with, it was two of us and 8 of our good Democratic friends, so it was about an even fight with George in the room. And it was really, the conversation was, well, gee whiz, if everybody's getting back from federal, why don't we just let this money roll to us at the state? And George and I tried to say we should focus simply on the state situation. We shouldn't let the federal cover that we're going to garner additional income. So we looked at, could we fix itemized deductions? Could we do the standard deduction? I had a bill for the standard deduction in the end that they did work off of. And through George and then the Senate, and we do have a really, budgeted tax is a very good group of people. Chairman Casemeyer, sadly, is retiring, and a good, really great leader, great gentleman that was very moderate in his views, very, just a very brilliant man. And so we gave back almost half between standard deduction and some various business tax credits. We increased what veterans and hometown heroes can exempt from their taxable income for pensions. And unfortunately, our friends in the House came at it. They didn't want to do anything. And so we really had to work to try to do whatever we could. And we did preserve the standard deduction. It wasn't quite what we wanted, but tax reduction in the state of Maryland is a pretty interesting idea. So we went from that to trying to figure out, there's 2 big things that are coming. In the last month, we had school safety, and how we dealt with this is how do we pay for it? How do we pay for, Mr. Trott is here, the original version was going to be $250 million to put a school resource officer, and Dr. Michael and us, and actually Steve Ganley is school safety. We were going back and forth. How much money do you put in this, right? Can we fortify our schools in such a way that nothing could ever happen? But the reality is you can only go so far. There's only so much you can do. School funding, and the Kirwan Commission came out with $2 billion recommendation. We already spend about $8 billion on education now, K-12. It's the largest part of our budget, and to spend more, which we've already done the last 10 years, and our outcomes haven't improved. I'm not sure that's something we need to do. We need to think about that and be efficient. That's going to be a major issue that comes for us in the future. So obviously we're on budget and tax. That's where we lived most of our life. That's where we focused. And you know, everything you want to do somehow has a fiscal cost to it. We have to figure out how do we pay for that. We were able to work with the governor and some of his initiatives to promote certain things. George has a great bill that will promote businesses out in the rurals and other areas. We were thankful that was one of the part of the package that we did. Cybersecurity is a big deal that we want to promote. But, you know, frankly, you know, we're budget people, we're number people. You know, the numbers are the numbers. But the reality is when it comes to how much we need to spend on our schools and how do we fix this school safety thing, those are outside numbers. Those are really, to me, those are hard issues. Those are really moral issues. My daughter teaches in Frederick County schools. She had a young boy that the mother abandoned at birth, and at 14, the father said, I don't want to be your parent anymore. How do we fix that? She had a young boy come in, you know, and last fall, how was your summer? Well, not too good. I walked in, and my mother and stepfather had both died of an overdose. How do we fix that? When we talk about the opioid crisis, it's taking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people out of the workforce. Somewhere between 2 and 4 out of 10 babies that are born are fetal drug addicted. Those will have traumatic brain injuries for the rest of their life. Potomac Center has the crack babies from the 90s. We will have to build facilities to take care of these babies born with this fetal opioid addiction. So I say to you, the numbers are the numbers. I'm grateful to this governor, and I will tell you, I'm sorry to go political for a second, but I just want to tell you, I don't have ESPN and can tell you exactly what's going to happen. That was a good one. Anyhow, you know it's early. I know you've been having a lot of coffee, and I know also that wasn't really that funny. Okay, so, but, and I will tell you, and I have very good Democratic friends. One of my best friends is a senator from Howard County, and we are political on the other ends, but we really work together. I love him for that because he is a brilliant man, and we come together and work on things. We try to create a win-win, and that can be done. And I think we do that in Annapolis more than other places. But the issue is this: you vote how you want for the governor, and next year that's entirely up to you. But I will promise you, and this is coming from them, if he is not retained, and I'm not trying to be blatantly political here, you will see an income tax increase, and you will see a property tax increase. It would have happened 4 years ago, that was for sure. Congressman Brown had already laid that out, and that was going to happen. And what will happen is property taxes are our county commissioners, their main source of revenue. When the state competes with that and raises their share of that, which is a small part of it, takes it, your residents don't care, they just know they're paying more taxes. So this is a pro-business governor. He is not going to raise taxes. He's worked and fought for that. He's gotten rid of regulations, it's been helpful. He's in everything he can. He's fought against the paid sick, and other people can talk about that. And I'm proud to serve with him. I'm just telling you, that's the numbers. That's just the brutal honesty. So anyhow, I may have gone too long. Thank you all for coming out. If you want me to say out something else rude about Paul, some more of your friends and business people will come out. I could go for hours. But anyhow, so thank you all. Have a great day.
Well, now we see why he went first. He's got great stories and really personalizing some of the major issues that we saw in Annapolis this year, especially when we look at school safety. That is one of the major issues. I serve on the Judiciary Committee, and the next person I'm going to introduce also serves on the Judiciary Committee, and we've heard a lot of those stories about school safety and how are we going to address it from a judicial point of view. And so the next speaker is going to be Delegate Paul Quarterman, and he is the newest delegate in Maryland House of Delegates, but I can tell you this, if you were in Annapolis, you would have no idea that he was the newest delegate, because from day one, he jumped in, worked very, very hard. He looked like he'd been there for the last 4 years, just right on top of it. And he's also my suite mate, so it was really encouraging to be able to work with Paul in Annapolis. He also came, from the city of Hagerstown as a council member, and so we're just really honored to have him, and I'd like to introduce now Paul Quarterman.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate everybody coming out here this morning. Again, I think I know most of everyone in this room, as Barrett said, I'm Paul Quarterman, most recently from the City of Hagerstown Council. I tell a lot of people when I meet people these days, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, would I have been on the stage right now talking to you right now, I would have said, you're nuts. I am a longtime resident of the City of Hagerstown, was born and raised. And I got involved in, I guess you would say, politics, so to speak, because I truly care about our community. I care about my city, I care about the City of Hagerstown, and I care about our county and our state. And having the opportunity, when this came about, after Brad Wilson was appointed to the judgeship, was a tremendous opportunity, and I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to not only serve the citizens of Hagerstown, but to serve all the citizens of the state of Maryland. So as I went down to Annapolis, I got dropped into this, as many as you know, just about 3 weeks before the session started. It was December the 20th I was appointed. The session started on January 9th, so it was a quick learning experience, to say the least. As Delegate Barrett said, I was the newest delegate still at the House of Delegates. After an election year, they have what's called an orientation. They bring everybody down and have a couple of days and kind of explain things and give you the kind of 101, how the bill becomes a bill and where do you go for this and go for that. Well, no such luck for the new delegate who comes down at the end of a session. So I was thrown right into it, but it's a great experience. I learned a lot, I learned fast, and I got to really thank the local delegation here first and foremost for all of the support and guidance they provided me throughout this experience. As I went down to Annapolis, one of the major things on my mind going down just from leaving the city was the urban improvement project we have in downtown Hagerstown. I know everyone is familiar with this project as we've been working towards it collectively over the last few years. So as we're about ready to embark on the largest redevelopment project in the history of Hagerstown, that was something very important to me to make sure we continue that momentum going. And the governor was gracious enough to continue with his support, and with the support of our great senator here, we're also able to pick up a few more dollars in reference to a bond bill. So thank you, Senator Serafini, for your assistance with that. Other issues as far as within the city of Hagerstown that I was fortunate to help work with, various meetings in regards to the Hamilton Hotel project, the Sprinkle Stoop downtown, and then another concern that came about, that many have read about in the papers, it's been ongoing for years, some of the dynamics with our residents on the outskirts in the county, and the impact they have with our community, not only in the city of Hagerstown, but throughout Washington County. So I was able to sit in on some of those meetings as well, and hopefully we can come to some resolution here on all these to help better our community go forward. As far as some other legislation, the delegation was gracious enough to assist me with a couple local delegation bills. So I was able to get those through, and that was a great experience. Other points that we've talked about already, supporting school safety, supporting growth and development. When I was on the city council and I ran for city council, there's three things that I spoke of often, and a lot of the same themes, because although it's not the city of Hagerstown per se, it's from the state level, a lot of these themes are still relevant. And those are public safety, growth and development, and fiscal responsibility. We talk about public safety, as the senator indicated, school safety is very important to all of us, and as we work through those dynamics, I'm looking forward to be able to provide that for our community. Not to mention, I was able to co-sponsor some legislation in regards to the modification of our volunteer fire, rescue, and emergency medical personnel. So I was very happy to be able to be part of that, which increases that limit. In regards to growth and development, you'll hear Senator Edwards speak about the One Maryland tax credit expansion later on, I'm sure. I was able to help co-sponsor that in the House side. So it's a great piece of legislation that now will include not only the city of Hagerstown, but Washington County. And then, of course, fiscal responsibility, as Senator Serafini already spoke of when we talk about taxes and balanced budget, things of that nature. It was very important to me to be able to be involved in those discussions as well. So, I won't stay up here all day because I know we got plenty more folks here to go. But I appreciate everyone coming out here this morning. I appreciate the support that I got from most of you here today. And I look forward to representing you here, and not only in Hagerstown, but in Athens going forward. Thank you.
So the next delegate that's going to address us is Delegate Bill Weibel, and he is an accountant who works at St. James. He's not just an accountant, he has his own business, rental properties, and I can tell you, as people look to vote in Annapolis, anybody who sits around Delegate Bill Weibel is curious, how's he going to vote on these issues? He's definitely researched every single one of the bills that comes forward and has good information on it as to why he would vote for it or against it, and so he's someone that people can look to as they're considering whether they're going to vote for something or not. So please join me in welcoming Delegate Bill Weibel.
Thanks, Neil. I appreciate the kind words. It was actually kind of a slow session this year because, as you all know, I share office with Delegate McKay, and he did not dress up in a suit this year. He didn't have his Winnie the Pooh suit. No excitement there. There were two things that were done this year that have haunted the state for decades, and the legislature took care of those this year. The first one was that we now have a policy for the use of sunscreen in our public school system. And the second one is that fluorescent orange is no longer the only color you can wear while hunting. You can now wear fluorescent pink. So we took care of those two issues right away. Serafini, they did laugh.
They were funny.
Anyhow, it was a busy session. Some folks think it's a big frat party. That's not the case at all. There were over 1,800 bills introduced in the House this year, and I serve on the Environment Transportation Committee, and we were fortunate enough to get 362 of those bills assigned to our committee. So there were many late nights, not as late as judiciary, because my chair does know how to use the time clock, unlike judiciaries. But anyhow, there were a lot of bad bills that actually failed in committee, and there were some that got through. But for the most part, I wanted to focus on what environment transportation, some of the major issues we addressed this year. The first issue involved trains. So one that passed is somewhat detrimental to the county, and that is that it requires a two-man crew on trains, freight trains that travel on the same tracks that have passenger trains. The testimony was that if you all pass this, we will just shut down passenger service on those freight lines, which could potentially impact the MARC train run to Brunswick. So Let's hope the trains don't carry through on that threat, but that would have a big negative impact on South County. Other two bills addressing trains. One is the maglev project. Unfortunately, that failed. That bill would have required local authority over the approval of projects of that type, which right now is mainly regulated by the federal government. So it would have basically killed any maglev project in the state of Maryland. And the one that did pass was the Hyperloop project, which it simply required an environmental impact study, which I guess isn't too bad. But so those two projects, I mean, have the potential to move forward in the state, the maglev and Hyperloop. The bad bills that failed, there were a couple of attacks on septic systems again this year. And septics overall, they're less than 6% impact when you talk about the threat to the Chesapeake Bay, but we have one delegate in our committee who continues to go after them. He's from Baltimore City. But the first would have required the installation of the best available technology septic system prior to selling a home in critical areas of the state. So we already have one of the highest closing costs in the nation for sale of homes, and this would have added probably about $25,000 to those homes that were affected by that. And the other one would have required the best available technology system to be installed in homes that are built within 1,000 feet of any stream. So that would have been a big negative impact as well on Washington County. The other bill that was brought back again this year was that affecting paint manufacturers. And it's just a really bad bill. So we're all familiar with lead-based paint issues. What this bill did last year was it imposed statewide, if you sold lead-based paint in the state, you were liable for any damages that a court case may have determined. So that didn't mean anyone had to prove that anyone was actually injured. It's just the fact that if that manufacturer had sold lead-based paint at any point in time in history in the state of Maryland, they would have been held liable for that. It's not funny, but the funny part about that is at one point we were told that Baltimore City actually required the use of lead-based paint in their school. That was a requirement. If you didn't use it, you didn't get the contract. So fortunately, that bill failed again this year, but they brought it back this year only to apply to Baltimore City. And that just created a lot of issues as far as imposing a standard on Baltimore City that was not imposed elsewhere throughout the state. Another bill that would have potentially impacted farming negatively was called a Healthy Air Act. And it went after large animal feeding operations. It was mainly focused on the chicken houses in southern Maryland, but it also would have affected anyone who raised cattle, whether for dairy or for meat. So it would have had a huge negative impact on Washington County. That bill did die in our committee as well. We did early in session hear about the state of the farming in Maryland, and it's not a real good picture. The dairy farms in the state, I think we had 600 some a couple years ago, we're down to a little less than 300 today. It's just the price of milk is just not supportive of those that are in dairy operations. There were a couple bills that were passed that seek to help that industry, although there's a lot more that needs to be done. One authorizes local jurisdictions to establish standards for agritourism so that those folks can diversify their operations a bit. And another one allows special occasion events in farms, so you can use your barns and stuff for banquet facilities and things like that. Another one beneficial to farming allows a tolerance on gross vehicle weights when you're traveling. So when you're harvesting, it depends on the weather, if it's rainy or dry or whatever. So this bill we've been trying to get passed for a few years. It actually allows a 5% tolerance on truck weights traveling within 100 miles of the field. Another bill that was kind of out of the ordinary that was passed this year actually allows naming rights on rest areas and welcome centers. So any of the delegates interested in having their name on the restroom, that option is now available to them. And then another bill that was kind of unique is Senate Bill 496, titled Gray Water. And what that bill does is it allows untreated water from showers, tubs, and laboratory sinks to be used for things like flushing toilets, watering your lawns, gardening, and things like that. So if you think about it, I mean, that will have a huge impact on the plumbing code and everything else to allow something like that to happen. But it keeps the waters from entering into the bay. It keeps excess water that's not necessarily have to be treated. See, Greg Murray's here, it's all about the water and sewer. So it keeps a lot of that volume of water out of our treatment plant. So that was kind of a neat bill that was before committee. I know the senator talked a little bit about the budget. My biggest disappointment with the budget was that we didn't decouple Maryland itemized deductions from the federal itemized deductions. For those of you that are aware, you have to itemize for federal in order to itemize for state. We could have simply removed that requirement, and because the federal's standard deduction is limited to $24,000 for married common joint, so a lot of folks will be taking the standard deduction for federal purposes. And that bill, if it passed, would have allowed you to decouple the state from the feds, and that would have had a big impact. And that was one of the reasons I did vote against the PERFA, is that we did not address a lot of the issues that we gave money back. We did some things, but we didn't give the money back to the folks that are giving up. And I think that if you really want to have a positive impact on Maryland taxpayers, you would have held them harmless in regards to what the budget would distribute to them. My biggest focus this year, again, was on a lot of the spending mandates. We had hundreds of millions of dollars in bills that just imposed spending mandates on the governor, and I always laugh because when we have a Democratic governor in the state again, I'm wondering if the legislature's going to reverse all those, because there's just hundreds of millions of dollars that requires the governor to spend in the budget. I think another issue that needs to be addressed coming down the road is the Maryland Public Policy Institute just had an article out on the Maryland pension system. Their estimate is that the state's lost about $9 billion over the last few years, just in the fact that we pay much higher fees for management of that pension fund and get a much lower return. We did have testimony, they updated us on that early in the session. What our fund managers did when the market collapsed, they sold out of equities. That's the worst thing you could have done. These folks make $400 million a year or so in fees. So I think that's a big issue that the legislature has to address coming up next term. So anyhow, I told the table I was at, they're not allowed to ask any questions, but I'm sure we'll be back to take your questions if you have any. Thank you.
It's nice that a bunch of the delegates here not only have businesses that we own, but also have previous government experience. We talked about Paul Gordon in the city of Hagerstown. We just heard from Delegate Bill Weibel, who was a county commissioner here in Washington County. And the next delegate is going to speak was in Washington, who was a county commissioner in Allegheny County. He owns his own dry cleaning businesses before that. And he's a real pleasure to work with. He does what it takes, as Bill alluded to get bills passed that are going to help our area, even if it does involve dressing up occasionally. So please welcome to the podium Delegate Mike McKay.
Well, good morning, everyone. I tell you, we live in a blessed community. Last night I was at a public forum, and my glasses broke. So I have an old pair here that makes it very, very hard to read, but blessed that I have this pair. On my way down today, Senator Edwards saw me going westbound, and I was headed to the dry clean to get everybody running and everything going to come east to Hagerstown. On my way down, got a flat tire right outside of Little Orleans. Why are we blessed? Former County Commissioner Jim Raley happened to be coming down. He works in Hagerstown. Pulled over, he said, "Can I help?" I said, "Yeah, I need my tire changed." He said, "Well, I'll give you a ride." And so he brought me here to Haver Hall. He just works right down the street. And so we live in a blessed community. We know lots of people will help each other out. And so I'm very thankful for that. So as I read some of it here, it's a little blurry, but we'll see what we can do. So on April 9th at midnight, the Speaker of the House lowered his gavel and the 2018 legislative session came to a close. It certainly was one of the most interesting sessions that, in the 4 years that I've been in Annapolis. But one thing is clear, Governor Hogan is truly changing Maryland for the better. And under his leadership, we are moving Maryland forward and leaving the tax and spend approach to state government in the past. For the 4th straight year, Governor Hogan has delivered a fiscal conservative budget, record funding for education, and no new taxes. We've also made progress this year in the most serious issues facing our state than any other session in recent memory. We passed parts of the governor's comprehensive school safety bill, passed several crime bills that strengthened penalties for repeat violent offenders, and secured more funding to combat the opioid and heroin epidemic. I'm very proud for the 4th year in a row to be serving on the Appropriations Committee and fought for our shared priorities and values throughout the budget process. Now, Governor Hogan's FY 2013 budget provided record funding for K-12 education and continues to deliver on the promise to grow the private sector and secures $26 million in investment for workforce development programs as well as economic revitalization projects in the past, among many places, including the city of Hagerstown. While we were down in Annapolis, some of the things that we worked on in our office was we proposed a bill. It's the I'm Alive app. Now, this app was for parents of opioid-exposed newborns. Unfortunately, we had 2,366 newborns born in the state of Maryland addicted to some form of opioid or substance abuse. In Washington County, of the 12 deaths that occurred in 2015, I believe this is correct, 9 of them were to babies that were substance abused. I had a young lady come to me, she lives in Frostburg. She was a new mom, she was reading a story about in Pennsylvania where the authorities went and found a newborn that had died. That newborn starved to death because 3 days earlier their parents had OD'd from heroin. It's a serious issue, this opioid epidemic that is tackling our state, our region, and our county. But it affects so many people. We put that app in. It did not pass, but we're hoping that future senators and delegates will look at it and allow that to go forward in 2019. It's a simple app. All it is that if you give birth to a child that is opioid exposed and Department of Social Services determines that you need to have this tool to help take care of your child, you'll receive on your phone a little alert. It says, are you okay today? And can you take care of your baby? No one wakes up in the morning saying, I'm not going to take care of my child. But unfortunately, if you're addicted to heroin or opioids, your day starts with the demons that are upon you. And as the day goes on, those demons take over, and you don't make necessarily the right choices. This act is to allow people to say, I'm okay today, I'm all right, I can take care of my newborn. If you don't send it, what ends up happening is social services will send somebody to check on you. Right now, the only time that we have people that check on people is when grandma says, I haven't heard from my daughter or I haven't heard from my son, and I'm worried about my child. All we're trying to do is create a tool to be proactive, to take care of those people who did not choose to be substance abused. We also presented a bill to have a constitutional amendment to the Article 5 provision that we would have congressional term limits. Washington, I firmly believe, is broken because as soon as you get in, you're running for the next election. And Maryland is one of the jurisdictions that actually does it right. We have a citizen legislature. We only go down for 90 days. In my case, I come back, and I go back to being the dry cleaner. In Washington, you're there for 2 years or you're there for 6 years, and that's your full-time job. I firmly believe that this was not intended as a full-time job, but if Washington was more like Maryland, where it was a citizen legislature, the manner in which our founding fathers, the concept came about, that I would be around. The third bill that we were very, very happy that it passed. Last year I shared with you that we had got a bill passed for adult Medicaid dental, having it authorized in the governor's budget. Over the summer, we did a really, really good job of getting it to like the 5-yard line. We almost got it into the budget. Matter of fact, the Maryland Department of Health put in a request for $30 million for that program. I shared with you a year ago, why is it important to you, Chamber of Commerce, is because these are your employees. These are the people that you want to be on the front lines, to be working for you. If they're happy, the mental health issues are taken care of, their family lives are taken care of, they will be the best employees for you. I'm proud to say that a bill did get passed to do a pilot program for the Medicaid adult dental. I'd like to thank all these gentlemen that are on the stage. They all were very supportive of it and voted for that bill. Right now it's a pilot program. It has approximately $10 million put into it. And what we're trying to do is now wrestle with Southern Maryland. We're trying to get Western Maryland to be the pilot program for it. That would be Garrett, Allegheny, and Washington County. We're very, very poised to show good results. And if we can show good results, the Secretary has said that he will then again put the money into the budget, and hopefully we'll have a statewide program. There are many things that happen in Annapolis. There are insignificant things. Delegate Wyville mentioned about important issues, but wearing pink, that is important to people and that kind of stuff. And there are things to be known for. Delegate Parrott, I believe, had mentioned about a costume to get in. That refers to the bees and the bears that we got passed a couple of years ago, and whatever we have to do. Whether it be the bee bill, whether it be agricultural science, those things were more regional. But I'm telling you, the adult dental Medicaid program, which is something that has not been our portfolio since the 80s, like 1984, to me, to help get something like that passed for in Allegheny and Washington County, 28% of the Alice report of the residents here will qualify for that. In Allegheny County, which I represent there, 29% of the Alice report says that they were. That's significant for the people that are our friends, our neighbors, and in the Chamber of Commerce are your employees. So it's a very important thing. Each year, the Maryland General Assembly creates a 90-day report, the Department of Legislative Services. And that report is for Mike Miller, the President of the Senate, and it's for the Speaker of the House and the members of the General Assembly. For the 4th year straight, I have created a 90-day report, and this 90-day report is for you, the people that I represent in Annapolis, regardless if you're from Allegheny or from Washington County. This report includes the status of legislation of 105 bills that I either sponsored, co-sponsored, or helped to get across. Each week in Annapolis, I post all of my votes, my third reader votes. A third reader vote is the final vote on a bill. And what we end up doing through this 90-day report, it lists every single bill. It lists how I voted for it and why I did vote for it. So if you would like a copy of this, please let me know. I'll be glad to give this to you. I'm a firm believer in full transparency. That's why we post this each week on our page. I'm encouraging people to be engaged with what's happening in Annapolis. Post-legislative reports are wonderful, but we're all being Monday morning quarterbacks. What I want you all to do is during the 90-day session, which a lot of you all do, is be engaged in the process every single day. Because at the end of the day, it's your future. It's our future, but more especially it's your future, and please be invested in it. Last but not least, there's still much more work to be done, primarily on the opioid epidemic, crime and public safety, and unfortunately, we need to root out the corruption that is in our state and local governments. Be glad to answer any questions that you may have, or if you would personally like to talk to me on something offline, I'm always available. Thank you again. I'm just blessed to be here. Thank you.
Good morning again. I guess now it's my turn because we're going to let the last batter be Senator Edwards. So I'm going to go ahead and talk just a little bit, a couple of impressions I had about session this year. Just a little bit on background. We talked about how everyone has different roles. I worked for 13 years at the Maryland State Highway Administration. Then I was the city engineer. That the actual official title was the Deputy Director of Engineering for Public Works. So kind of long, so I'm trying to say city engineer in the city of Frederick. And then I started my own company, Traffic Solutions Incorporated, which I tried to run that and be in Annapolis at the same time during that 90 days, as do several other members here, try to run the business. So it can be challenging, but we do get a lot of work done while we're down there and here as well. And so I'm going to talk a little bit first about transportation and infrastructure. Obviously, I-81 is one of our main priorities, and right now, Phase 1 is getting constructed. If you go on down to the Potomac River, you'll see they're making great progress. And it won't be too long until they actually do a road shift, where we're going to use some of the new bridge that they've constructed so they can start the next phase that they need to construct. So that's Phase 1 of I-81. Phase 2, and you probably read about it, we have applied for a grant, Governor Hogan has, to take what we've done up to Williamsport and go to I-70 to widen I-81 to 6 lanes. And then Phase 3, and maybe just one phase instead of 4. They were talking 3 and 4, but talking to the State Highway recently, they said it might just be a Phase 3 that would go from I-70 all the way to the Pennsylvania line. So we'll see, but that is something that's a priority for Governor Hogan. As we see, it's under construction now. The second phase, he's applying for these federal grants. It used to be called Fast Lane. I had to write down the new name. It's called Infrastructure for Rebuilding America. And we're applying for $46 million to do Phase 2. So that'll be interesting. Hopefully we're able to get that funding. They haven't announced what's getting funded or not yet. I expect to see that probably in the summer. I do want to contrast a little bit. When Governor O'Malley, so this is my second term, and my first term was Governor O'Malley, and the second term, Governor Hogan. And right before Governor O'Malley was there, of course, was Governor Ehrlich. And Governor Ehrlich was about to widen I-270. There was something called the express toll lanes, where the people who want to pay a toll can go there. The other lanes are free. We've seen Virginia do it very successfully. Actually, under Governor Ehrlich, we did get that type of project funded in the Baltimore area going towards Delaware on I-95. It's a great road. And that would have happened right here on I-270, but unfortunately for that road, Governor Ehrlich was not elected for a second term, and that whole project was scrapped when Governor O'Malley came with a much more high emphasis on public mass transportation, which really just focuses on the city of Baltimore, Montgomery County, Prince George's County. So I think if we want to continue to have this road project move forward, we're going to need to have Governor Hogan come back for a second term. And one major project that he's announced is the widening of I-270. So we talk about I-81 and the priority here, and then also I-270 and I-495. We're talking $7.6 billion for I-270 and 495. It's a huge project, but it is a top priority for Governor Hogan. And of course, that's a second term thing. He can't even really, they're starting some planning now, but that's not going to come to fruition at all until that second term. So if we want to see those roads widened, I think we need to get Governor Hogan back in, or we're going to see those monies go somewhere else in public transportation that wouldn't quite be as beneficial to folks here in Washington County, which are commuting to DC every day. So that's a little bit of transportation. So as I'm talking, please write down questions. We've heard so many different topics today, so I think the cards are on your desk, so please write some of those questions down. I do want to talk a little bit now about a bill that I introduced this year, but I actually introduced it a couple of years ago, and it has to deal with welfare. And it's called, there's a group of people who are on welfare and who get food stamps. They're able-bodied adults without dependents, and they call them ABODs, so that's their official name. But really what it means is people, they could work. They don't have anybody they're taking care of, like those senior citizens at their home, no kids. and they're just not working, and they're getting food stamps, they're getting money from us for welfare. And under Newt Gingrich, you might remember, Newt Gingrich, it was back in the 80s, and Bill Clinton signed the bill, President Bill Clinton, that said if you're going to be on these welfare program, that you need to work at least a little bit every week, or volunteer. The volunteer hours are not long. It was 6 hours a week to volunteer. And I think here in Washington County, we could all point to different places. There are plenty of opportunities to volunteer. And the work requirement was about 20 hours a week. So in Washington County, I actually introduced that bill my first year of this term to have it just apply to Washington County. And thankfully, what happened was we worked with the Hogan administration, and they redid the numbers to take a look. Well, are we still economically able to file for the exemption where you didn't have to work or volunteer or not? And they came back and said, well, you know what? Our new numbers show that actually Washington County, we don't qualify. So we, just by having the analysis done, we changed the requirements in Washington County, so you had to work or volunteer. And so that's been the case now for about 3 years. And it's been very, very telling to see the results of what's happened. It's been very positive. The number of AVODs who are on welfare and getting food stamps has decreased by 1/3. A lot more people who are actually receiving those benefits are working now at the same time as receiving the benefits. So I think that's helped the community, and it's also helped those individuals who are on the program, because now they're having some self-esteem. They're actually working and doing things to help themselves and help the community. So seeing that, seeing the great results that we saw here in Washington County, we don't need to just look locally. We can look at other states like Maine, which has done this for about 5 or 6 years, which is phenomenal results. I introduced a bill to do that statewide. Now that bill didn't pass. There was a lot of concern about how that would affect the city of Baltimore. But I think what it would do is help the city of Baltimore and allow people to be working and volunteering and being more productive. And so even though it didn't pass at the state level, that's something that I'm watching for at the federal level. It seems like that might be something that the Trump administration makes happen. They're actually right now doing a feasibility study to see if that's something that should happen or not. And I expect a decision this summer. I'm actually expecting that this whole exemption program is going to go away, and we're going to be able to see people get, I believe, the help they need by helping them to work and volunteer. Because these folks, remember, there's no reason why they can't work. They're AVODs. They're able-bodied adults. They don't have dependents. They can't work. So I think it'll be very, very positive, and that's something to watch out for this summer. I did want to talk about, in Annapolis, a couple of tax cuts. Now, it's interesting to talk about tax cuts, because my first year, 4 years with Governor O'Malley, I could never stand up here and talk about one tax cut. I can't remember. Except for actually there was one. There was one. And it was Delegate Kathy Afzalian in Frederick County worked with the O'Malley administration, and it was the death tax. A lot of people were losing their farms when their parents would die because of this death tax, the huge tax that they had to pay. And they really increased that number so people could keep their farms. That was the one tax cut that I saw under the O'Malley administration. But in this administration, every year we talked about fee increases and tax increases. The largest tax increase in Maryland's history was during that term. And really, until this year, there hasn't been one tax or fee increase at all at the state level in Maryland. Matter of fact, what we saw was a lot of tax decreases, and we saw tolls dramatically decrease. So a couple tax decreases this year that I wanted to highlight. There's a military retirement income. So when people retire, and if they're in the military, now they're going to be able to write off $15,000 towards the tax write-off, so they don't have to pay taxes on that first $15,000. Now it's being phased in over the next 4 years, but it's going to be a huge benefit. You know, I've talked to many military folks, and when they choose to retire, they can go anywhere. But a lot of them work here in Fort Meade or NSA or down in St. Mary's County, and this bill is going to allow them to stay right here at Fort Detrick. I think it's very, very important. And this really comes on the heels of last year when we did the same type of decrease. We called it the, well, I forgot what we called it. But basically it was for the fire and rescue folks. And so this year we extended that bill also to correctional officers, which is particularly helpful here in Washington County where we have 3 correctional facilities. So I was very, very glad to see that bill move forward and get passed. So those are a couple of tax cuts this year. Now I did mention we hadn't had any tax or fee increases in Maryland for the last 4 years. And if you look at my handout, it's on your table, the very first thing you'll see when you look at the table of contents is that I wrote 4 years in a row, no new taxes in Governor Hogan's budget. And it's almost like that should be in parentheses in Governor Hogan's budget, because this year the legislature did pass a tax increase, which had to do with health insurance. Now, it's unfortunate. If you look at the health insurance policies right now, if you have an S corporation, I don't know if anyone here is in that situation, but if you have an S corporation, or if you're looking for insurance on your own and you don't qualify for subsidies, the rates of increase in that insurance are astronomical. I mean, you're talking $20,000 a year for one person, just for health insurance. And it's becoming unbearable. And part of the reason why is people who are sick are the ones who want the insurance, and people who aren't as sick say, whoa, this is costing too much, I'm just going to go without the insurance. And so there was a correction this year for Maryland, just to try to put a Band-Aid on what's a huge problem in Obamacare. We've got to change at the federal level. Something has to change. What we have now is not working. And so at the state level, we said what we're going to do is tax all health insurance plans. And then we're going to apply that money towards these plans that go towards individuals or S corporations, basically individuals who want health insurance, so that they don't have to pay that astronomical amount and bring it down that rate they're going to pay. So I think what that will do is the end effect would be to encourage more people to have that insurance, which actually might keep the rates down on their own. So interesting bill. At the end of the day, I didn't vote for it because there was a couple other things there I had issues with, but I think the concept really needed to happen in order to help people with S corporations and who are trying to go have their own insurance. It's just becoming, again, unbearable. Something needs to change at the federal level for that. So there's a couple things I want to talk about, and it is encouraging. We haven't had tax or fee increases, and that's helped Maryland to have a much better business environment. As we look at different companies, are going to move to Maryland or Pennsylvania or West Virginia, we are encouraging people to try to come to Maryland. And you can even see that in one bill that Governor Hogan really wanted to get passed, and it's on the last page of my handout, which is Amazon.com. There's a big tax incentive program over the next 10 years that if they come here, they will be able to take advantage of. So we'll see where they end up going with their headquarters too, I don't know. But Maryland has really put a strong foot forward, and we'd like to have them here in Maryland. And again, of course, we'll see the verdict is still out there. They're looking at several different cities across the country as to where they're going to go. So with that, I want to get ready now to turn it over to Senator George Edwards. He's the final batter here. And we talk about local government. It's interesting. He was a county commissioner. He was a state delegate. Now he's a state senator, and he's a senior state senator. People look to him on many different issues. Of course, he's a business owner, was a teacher. I mean, his resume is incredible. And my favorite, and you guys have been here before, I've heard, he played for the Baltimore Colts, which is my team as a little kid. So please welcome Senator George Edwards.
Everybody's looking at their watch, so I can say I don't have any jokes. I'm just saying, me too. I was going to talk about this, someone else did. I was going to talk about that, someone else did. I was sitting there when the slide was up there and saw this bridge. That bridge happens to be in my hometown in the big city of Grant, so you know where that is. Why do they have a picture of that bridge here in Hagerstown today? Well, I found out when you did the slide, and you started from the east and went to the west. I normally say the prevailing winds predominantly blow from west to east, but this went from east to west. That's good, ended up in my hometown. I know all those places very well. So if you haven't been to any of them, please come out and I'll be happy to show them to you. I'm going to take about 3 minutes if I can, Paul, very quickly if I can, because everything's been talked about. Just mention the budget, $44.6 billion budget. We have about, I'm going to wrap this into one, if you count the rainy day fund and the general fund balance, we have about $1 billion in reserves or surplus, whatever term you want to put on in case something happens economically. Spending this year went up 2.2%. The revenues are increasing 3%. Usually the revenues only increase about 3%, but our spending's been about 5%. So we have a structural, still have a structural deficit. And people that know math know it's not good to have 5% going out and only 3% coming in. This year is a little different. We're able to put $200 million. You heard about the tax cuts and so forth. But sometimes you have to compromise on things to get them passed, as long as you don't compromise the principle. That's kind of what we did with these tax things, and based on the numbers I've seen, about 91% of Marylanders will get some break in taxes, either through your paycheck or when you do your form next January, April, whatever, for 2018, you'll get some money back. So 91% projected to get some money back through the federal tax, plus what we did at the state level, even though we'd like to have made it that nobody lost any money, but we just couldn't do that. We put $200 million aside out of that funding to put in the education fund, as we're looking at, I think Senator Serafini said $2 billion increase if we support the Carlin Commission recommendations, which will come out shortly. Now, if you look at Washington County and direct aid and retirement payments, this is money coming from the state to Washington County. It's about $201,580,000. Now, if the state said we're not going to do that, and if the county wanted to do that, Washington County would have to raise the tax rate $1.54 to accomplish that. Let's talk about two quick bills. One's been mentioned, which is the One Maryland simplification bill. I've been working for years to try to come up with a program that would help. And I've changed the name of it. I've tried to massage it to get enough support to get it passed. We looked at, do we just do rural counties? Do we include everybody and tier them with different benefits in different counties? Or we call them poor counties? So last 2 years I worked with the Department of Commerce, and we came up actually with the bill that passed, which is the One Maryland Simplification Act. Like it or not, I represent 3 counties, about 100 miles from one end to the other. It's the largest senatorial geographic district in the state of Maryland. So I have 3 of everything. Kind of keeps you busy, going to here and there and so forth. Like it or not, the 3 counties I represent, 2 of them are in the four poorest counties in the state by median income, family median income, which is Garrett and Allegheny. The last number that I saw about 2-3 years ago, in that regard, Allegheny was like 40,000, 38 to 40,000. Garrett was 44, and Washington 53. So Washington's in the lower 10 anyway, or 8 actually, in the state. So we don't like saying that, but that's the reality. We're a poor part of the state. So we were fortunate to get this bill passed this year, which does take effect 1st of July. It switches from statewide average per capita income, based on 67%, to family median income, which is a truer, more accurate look at wealth for a subdivision. So it's going to that and it'll be 75%. So all 3 counties will fit into this bill. And instead of using 150% of the federal minimum wage, we're going to use 120% of the state wage. The companies will have to pay, instead of $10 and something an hour, they're going to have to pay $12 and something an hour, which is a good thing for an employee. Big thing is we're changing kind of the name. We're going from qualified distressed counties, which kind of has a negative connotation as some people look at it, to a tier 1 county, we're going to call these counties. So there'll be 3 brackets from 10 to 25 employees fit in one, 25 to 50 in another, and over 50 in another. There'll be 3 categories. Each one has a different tax credit scenario. I think this will help stimulate as you look at opportunity zones, which the federal government passed, which impact part of Washington County, and the More Jobs for Marylanders Act, which we passed last year, will go a long way in helping attract and keep, and this is for companies already here that want to expand also, not just try to get new businesses here. And school safety is another big issue that was talked about. We're putting $42 million into school safety. Counties have to apply for it. The thrust here is to get safety resource officers in every school, all of them. Want to start out with high schools. A lot of them already have them. The counties can apply for capital things such as different kinds of doors, metal detectors, etc., whatever they want to do, but they have to be eligible through the state process. Senator Serafini, he doesn't like to pat himself on the back too much. We have a great delegation, by the way. We work well together. I talk about District 1, District 2, we're in District 2 now, but if you put the two of us together, there's 8 of us. And now it's out of 188, 2 senators and 6 delegates. If you look at what's been accomplished over the years, I think it says a lot for the people you've elected to represent you here in Annapolis. I believe, accomplished quite a bit. Senator Serafini serves on budget tax me. I do on occasion have to keep him straight. But he's well respected, one of the sharpest knives in the drawer down there when it comes to taxes and pensions and that kind of thing, and leadership in the Senate and even the administration, drawing his experience and expertise in that, does a great job on that issue. So I'm not going to say anymore because he's over here itching to get up here. It's supposed to have been done 3 minutes ago, so thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator, and the rest of our delegation. It is after 9, so out of respect for time, will the 6 of you stick around just for a few minutes in case folks have questions of you? So if you have a specific question you'd like to ask, they'll stick around for a few minutes. I do want to address the fact that light turnout. I think you're right, Senator Serafini, but things are going well. People are kind of stay in their office, stay in their business, stay in their nonprofits, and leave everyone know they're not going well. They're more likely, just like the customer complain that things aren't well, things go great, they'll thank you. So I think that's part of it. We do want to thank you 6 for working on our behalf here in Washington County. The Advancing Community Coalition is something we do every year as with 8 other partners. The bond bill money that we have here in the community, we take good care of. The Urban Improvement Project, we have a great partnership with city, county, USMH, our school system. And so, that's great collaboration. So I think that goes to the fact that things are going well, we're working together, we're collaborating, and I will tell you, and I think you've seen it, all 6 of these folks, if you have a question or concern, you can reach out to them, their office, they will call you back, email you back, they're available to speak with you. And I would encourage you, as we're looking to 2019, if there's legislation either you're for or against, that you contact our delegation, you go down and testify in Annapolis, either in person or you write. And I'd also like to thank, so let's give another round of applause, our delegation, thank you very much. Thank Aaron Howe, his Bank of Charlestown team. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you're a little gift this morning, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. And thank all of you for coming. I'm reading the book, Thomas Friedman, Thank You for Being Late. And the executive summary is about how technology is impacting our lives. And we're all so busy, and it's changed how we do things. It's changed, according to Mr. Friedman, I agree, how we can govern and legislate locally and on a national level. So I think it's important to look at how we can do some things more innovatively, not only locally, but at the state level. And one idea someone expressed last week, a lot of folks can't get to Annapolis to testify, they're just too busy. 2 things, providing live video for the committee work, I know that's been talked about, I don't think it's going much anywhere there, we do it locally, but at the state level. And also, someone mentioned, can someone record it, you have 2 minutes to testify, can someone record a 2-minute video, and instead of being in person, can that happen? So just some things to think about. I'll give you the last word, Delegate Parrott, and then we'll wrap up. Can you do it in 30 seconds?
Well, thankfully, on the internet, they can get live videos. So we are moving into the 21st century. There have been bills that the Republicans introduced last year that said for the General Assembly, when we're actually debating on the House floor, to have that also live video streamed, which is not right now. So the committees are, but that is not. And so that's something we're going to push for, just for open meetings, to let people know exactly what's happening. You can get the audio of what happened at Senate debates or House debates, but you cannot see a video online. So we want to thank you for hosting us. Thank you for being here today. There's more information here. We are going to be here to answer questions and just to talk for a little bit. And again, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the day.